Vegas, and geologists love to go there. And I spent it with Loma Linda University's Dr. Kevin Nick, exploring Arrow Canyon. It was 120 degrees with him and the 5 students that he brought and his wife. And I don't think I've cooled down yet, so I'll take my coat off for right now. Let me see, it looks like we've got a light and a screen. Great. Good morning, Sabbath, my fellow Seventh-day Adventist keepers. It is great to be with you here today. Beverly and I feel honored that you invited us to come down. This might be a little different today. I've taken my coat off. I'm not a preacher. I'm a physician. I'm an emergency doc. I actually retired most of emergency medicine about 3 years ago. I still do teledoc on the phone right now. But at PUC, I was a religion major. And so life has taken me different ways, and I hope to share a little bit of all of that. I hope you'll cut me a little bit of latitude to maybe have a slightly different format today. I am thrilled to see this community, this group. Sabbath School was amazing. You know, it's something that with Beverly's music, we tend to go to lots of different churches and different communities, but I don't know any place that does Sabbath school like Seventh-day Adventists do, you know, where people contribute all around the group. Elijah and was it Roger and you know, just so many people were participating so vigorously. That's great. It's also a challenge to me. I got to think, oh, these people are listening. The other thing that I think is amazing is I'm not seeing a uniform panel of gray hairs here today. I'm so glad that Bev was able to talk to the youth here with her song today, and to see the youth here in the pews all around is thrilling in an environment like this. Whatever you're doing here, my hat's off to you. It's inspiring. It is a challenge, you know. I'm not trained as a preacher. I come to every one of these talks when I do give them thinking, what can I do for this group? And when I listen to your Sabbath school, okay, do I need to edit anything, you know, or change something here? I pray that what we do today will be of benefit to us all. May we start with just a brief opening prayer. Father, may the words of my mouth, but more the meditations of our hearts here today be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. In the beginning, God. Good place to start. You know, the Hebrew and Greek texts didn't actually have punctuation, periods and commas and things like that. I kind of wish that Genesis started with just this, in the beginning, God. Because already, even before we go on to say, God created the heavens and the earth, in the beginning, God is already telling us an amazing truth. Number one, it tells us that there was a beginning. Almost every other creation story, or if I can say creation myth, whether you read the Babylonian myth or the Islamist story or the Gilgamesh epic that talk about, you know, the beginnings of the world, they all start with something, which kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But here's the thing. They say, there was this place that had no name, but later we'll call it the earth. And there was this thing that we'll call the sky, and then God moved into this place and began to do things. Our Bible is the only one that says, in the beginning, all there was God. It says that God went in to create the heaven and the earth. Now, that's kind of a literary tool. Sometimes called a merism, where you say, like, the Alpha and the Omega. Well, when you say Alpha and Omega, you mean everything, from the beginning to the end. And so God created everything at that point. The heaven and the earth. Everything that we see. Even, and this is hard for us mortals to understand, even time started when God created the heavens and the earth. And we read that in other places in the Bible. It says, before time was, I am. Before Abraham was, I am. Psalms talks a lot about how God was before anything ever existed. And only our epic, our Bible, tells that story, which now today is matching science. I'm going to be talking a fair amount about science right now. Now, science is used so much today. It's used as a club sometimes. You know, we follow science, and then we follow it this way and that way. Science is a tool, very important tool. It's not the truth, though. It's a method of getting towards the truth. Science is showing us now things that we didn't know when Darwin says all this stuff about evolution. We now know that there was a beginning. And before that, what could there be but God? It's interesting when you go on and read, to me, that book of Genesis. It talks about, and we mentioned this a little bit in our Sabbath school today, it talks about a process that took place. You know, the scriptures tell us that he spake and it was done, he commanded and it stood fast. That's very true. Could he have made the entire heaven and earth that we know about, and all the animals in it, and all the people in it, in one instant, in the twinkling of an eye? Could have, I believe absolutely. But he took 6 days. He took a process. He took a series of creative acts to end up where he wanted to be. I think this is a lesson that we often as humans get impatient with God. We want it done now. Why not? What are we waiting for? My ways are not your ways, nor are my thoughts your thoughts, we're told. There's a process that takes place, step by step. Interesting that even the way he created seems to be different on the 6 days of the week. You know, in the one he said, let the earth bring forth the herb-yielding seed, which was different than what he said on the 6th day, where he said, only for man, he said, let us make man in our image. And then chapter 2 tells us that he took the clay, the dust of the earth, and formed man. Did he have to use the dust? Well, remember, he created the dust, so it is his stuff to start with. But did he have to use dust? To me, this is the entire reason why God separated creation out, is to teach us various lessons. And we as Adventists are very strong about the idea that it established the seventh day. The seventh day was when he rested from all his work. And that's absolutely beautiful, isn't it? That's what we're doing here today, is celebrating his creative power by our very presence here today. But it also, to me, ties you and me to this earth in a way. We are made of this stuff, the stuff that this earth produces. What did we say? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. From dust you were created, and to dust you shall return. We are not some separate thing. Adam and Eve were put in the garden to do what? To tend it, to keep it, to expand it, wasn't it perfect? What did it need? Well, I don't know all that, but I do know that that's what God said. That there was a process of creation. On the 6th day, out of the stuff of this earth, he created us as human beings. It ties us to this earth. Our job was to take care of this earth and for his glory, for the future of the world. Beautiful pictures, images of mankind being created from the dust. And then what did he do at this point? After he created the physical from the dust, there was another step. And this is the only time the Bible records this step. This step that I'm about to talk about didn't happen with the fish, didn't happen with the plants. It only happened with man, where God then stopped. It wasn't enough for man to be created from the clay. We are not merely molecules. We are not merely, our minds, in my humble opinion, are not merely more complex neurons than, say, an ape or a dolphin. You know, we don't just have more neurons. There is something extra that God did at this step, where he stooped down and he breathed the breath of life into man. And at that point, only man, not all the other things that he created, man became what? A living soul. Okay, so I think there is a beautiful story here where God shows the process of creation that ends up with a very unique and special creation. Are you familiar with the term enigma? So enigma means something that is mysterious, seems impossible to understand or explain. An enigma, how did that ever happen? Well, there's a fascinating book that I've read recently by an atheist, okay? So this Andrew Parker is a professor of biology at Oxford University. He is a specialist on light, on biology that perceives light. So he looks at how starfish eyes work and how squid's eyes work and how human retinas work. He's completely an atheist, but he was writing a book on light, and someone responded to his book and said, did you know that in your book on light, when you talked about how the earth came to be, that it closely matches the story in the Hebrew scriptures in the Bible? And he said, oh, that's ridiculous. How could that possibly be? But he decided to stop and look at it. So he picked up a Bible for the first time, and he read through, and he was shocked. So shocked that he wrote this book, the Genesis Enigma. And let me show you what he wrote in this book. He said, here, then, is the Genesis Enigma. The opening page of Genesis is scientifically accurate, but was written long before the science was known. How did the writer of this page come to write this creation account? So he's saying, I'm a scientist. I know all this stuff, and I know how things happen, and it matches what I know to be true. How could this have happened? Doesn't happen in the Gilgamesh epic. Doesn't happen in the other history, in the other stories about creation. And again, at the end of the book, he says, but the Genesis Enigma has told us that these enigmatic phrases ignite the Bible actually mean something. They are scientifically accurate. That would be an outrageous assertion for an atheistic, Darwinistic scientist to make, were it not true. There is a song that you may have heard on the radio that says, oh, mothers, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys, right? Okay. Well, I am here to say, mothers, let your children grow up to be scientists, because scientists is exploding with information that validates the fact that there is a designer, that it had to have come from a mind. When Darwin was here, we didn't know this stuff. Darwin thought that, cells were a bag of salts. Simple, right? I'm here to tell you that science now shows there is no simple life. There's small life, there's teeny tiny itsy bitsy life in cells, but it ain't simple. It's incredibly complex. It has foresight, it has planning, it has design. It had to have come from a mind. Now, when you just look at the cells, you can't say which mind. There are diabolical minds. I believe that the devil is entirely capable of messing with biology, with genetics. We're messing with genetics nowadays. It scares me, frankly. I bet you the devil knows way more about CRISPR and genetic manipulation than we ever will know. And so, not everything we see in biology is pretty, always. Or some would say they don't like the term intelligent design because they think some things are pretty stupid. But they are clearly designed. And then we take the Bible and see the story that fits the science and tells us, oh, it's this guy that did this design that we see today. Romans, for since the creation of the world, that very first thing, in the beginning, God, since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been what? What? Clearly seen. If you'll open your eyes, young scientists, old scientists, and look and see. And where do you see it? Just through the scriptures? No, that's obviously incredibly important, but you see it from what has been made. So they are without excuse. Here's my paraphrase of that verse that we just read. If you study nature, you will be able to see scientifically design, power, intelligence, So really, if you look at it clearly, nobody has an excuse to deny God. But our world is full of all kinds of strange opinions. Opinions about this, opinions about, health, opinions about politics. Some of them are maybe pretty good. Some of them, sadly to me, and I'm going to switch a little to my health talk right now, are strongly informed opinions, uninformed opinions. You remember back in Galileo? You remember his story? Who was he up against with his science? He was up against everybody, including the Catholic Church was obviously the one thing. And I love his statement at that time. He said, "In the realm of science, the authority of 1,000 is not worth the humble reasoning of a single individual." We read this morning in Sabbath school, God says, "Come, let us reason together." If you look at the data, it will show you. So many times we hear this idea, everybody knows, We Adventists, I think, are uniquely positioned to fight against this problem. And you young people, you youth here today, are in a position to realize that not everything that you hear on the internet is true. Everybody knows. Everybody knows that Sunday is the day of worship, right? Well, we have been trained to withhold judgment. We say, no, wait a second. I'm going to look at the scriptures, and I'm going to look at creation, and say, I don't think so. I think something different is going on. I think Saturday is the day, based on the evidence. So many people just accept, everybody knows. That's all you have to think about. Everybody knows that we evolved from bacteria, right? It's so pervasive. Not only in lay publications, but in spiritual publications, I see the idea of Darwinism put forward. Well, actually, despite the overwhelming opposition, we Christians look at the science. If you're a good scientist, you can look at the science of biology and geology and paleontology, and you read the Bible record, and we know that we are clearly designed by a creator God. So we Adventists have grown used to taking different opinions. Do you remember this slogan from a few years ago? Now, I have a Macintosh here, so I'm a bit biased, all right? So, think different. Do any of you old enough to remember the Think Different campaign? It was Steve Jobs back when he returned to Apple Computer just after the turn of the century. He brought up this thing of thinking different. What did he mean by that? It's not English correct grammar. You should say think differently. But I think there may have been a purpose for him to kind of make it catch in your ear. Think different. Here was the mantra or the slogan for Think Different campaign. You may remember this. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. You can't ignore them because they change things. They push forward. And while some may see them as crazy ones, we see genius, because the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are often the ones who do. So don't follow the crowd. Think differently. I spent a week ago, last Sabbath, I was out in the desert of Montana, or actually I say the plains of Wyoming, studying with this guy, Arthur Chadwick. He is a well-trained biologist, scientist, who for decades now has been studying life, studying biology, studying fossils, studying paleontology. And he has a thing called The Dig. He's professor at Southwest Adventist University, an amazing resume of papers and published works. But you can go in June to The Dig and dig up dinosaur bones. Every day if you go to The Dig, they assign you there a meter squared of dirt, and you start pawing through it bit by bit with toothpicks and brushes and things, and you will find dinosaur bones. But he looks at these and thinks differently. He thinks, okay, there's dinosaurs for sure. How did they get here? How did they die? What happened to them? These bones were washed down in what? big thing of water, a.k.a. the flood. So there are different ways that bones come. And you can see here how we're working meticulously. But this is the densest deposition of dinosaur bones in the world, as far as we know. So if you spend a few days, you will find multiple bones there. But he thinks about it differently than all the other scientists in the world. Kevin Nick, that's the one that I was sweating with yesterday out in the desert here of Arrow Canyon. Again, a well-trained scientist, he's a geologist, is his training, who thinks differently. Now, Kevin Nick and Chadwick don't agree 100% about everything. You know, they might have a slightly different interpretation of this deposition or that bone, or perhaps exactly where the flood fits in here. That's okay. They all love their Lord, and they all believe that he was our designer and creator. And so, again, we do not need to fear scientists or beings trained as scientists, because increasingly the evidence is showing us the truth. I'm going to skip here forward. Sir Isaac Newton, okay, one of the most epic, he's the reason we think about gravity, and we think about the way the planets move, and said this: the most elegant system of the sun, planets, and comets could not have arisen without the design and dominion of an intelligent and powerful being. If there is one book, if I have a person to come to me, a teenager, an adult, that says, you know, I just struggle with how we can put science and religion together, I'm going to recommend this one book. It's by John Lennox, professor of mathematics at Oxford University. I've met this guy. I've been to seminars by him. I've read many of his books. This particular little book, Can Science Explain Everything? It's about the exact same size as Steps to Christ used to be. Remember when? Or still is. It's a very easy read, but there's no one that I know that better kind of goes through how science and religion work so beautifully together than John Lennox's presentation of it. Just something to consider. I'm going to turn now to some other areas where science and what everyone say, I'm going to show you is not true. Before I do that, I'm going to ask Beverly to come and play one more song for us. Did you know that you could be a doctor of harp? Beverly was about the 4th in the whole world to be given that degree of doctor of harp. Now there's maybe a dozen. That's all it is. It's a very unusual degree, only given by a couple of institutions in the world. So you have to be able to haul a 75-pound harp. That's right. That's right. With or without husband. He's not always available. So yeah, that's right. Yeah, you bet. All right. So I want to share with you a little bit. I'm going to move here just a wee bit. Pardon me for just a second. This is my Father's world. He made it. He designed it. He structured it. He created it. He's sustaining it today. It's an amazing thing. Things don't happen by chance, and so we can make sense of it. If you're a good scientist, you can sort through it. The reason we have science is because God made rules for the earth, for gravity, the cosmological constant, the small nuclear force, the weak nuclear force. There are all kinds of things that God set. And the only reason we are able to exist is because they were set perfectly for us to live today. When I talk about health, though, I often use this term nutritional nonsense. And what I mean by that, really, if you dissect it, is what I'm talking about is, let me see, I have to get rid of this. Go. Is nutritional non-science. There's so many things that just come out of, well, I think it feels good. I like it. There's so many things that come out of other places. For example, nowadays, what do you mean I got all my facts wrong? I copied everything straight off the internet, If that's where you found it, it must be true. At a recent Thanksgiving dinner before COVID, we were sitting around family members, and a nephew of mine made the following comment. I was intrigued as a physician to hear him say, he's a young professional, trained all the way through Adventist education, has now his CPA, working for a big firm in the Bay Area. Brilliant, brainy guy. But here's what he said. He says, this year my New Year's resolution is to eat a balanced diet. I said, oh, okay, well, he's getting into my ballywick here, so I decided I had to query him a bit. I said, okay, what do you mean by a balanced diet? He said, well, my target is to eat 30% protein, 30% carbs, and 30% fats. Intriguing. I'm thinking, again, this is a smart guy. He reads, he studies, he's an accountant. So is it just a pretty number, kind of a uniform that he was looking for, a symmetric number? So I asked him again why 30%? And here was his reply. His reply was, well, everyone knows you need more protein, right? You see it everywhere. You read it everywhere. So an accountant may or may not have it right. I give a lecture, I go into much more depth into the science that I'm going to do today, but I give a lecture to other physicians, to my emergency physicians, to hospitalists, on whole food plant-based diet. And before one that I gave to my partners, 80 emergency board certified emergency physicians, I gave them a survey. And I asked them ahead of time, on a pre-lecture survey, I said, what do you believe, doctor, is the ideal target for protein in the human diet? And do you know what they said? On average, which means some were more, some were less, my doctors felt 38% was the right target for protein. Okay. So I have a professional SDA-trained millennial who thinks 30% is a good target. And I have a whole slew of well-trained MD-certified emergency physicians and hospitalists, and I've given it to other groups, who think 38% is a good goal. I'm going to show you very quickly, without getting too technical today, they are both totally, very much wrong. First of all, doctors aren't trained in these things in med school. I'm sorry. They do not have courses in nutrition. On average, they may have 1 hour in the entire 4 years that they talk about nutrition a little bit. Okay, that's the reality. Okay, and so where did they get this training? How come this millennial accountant has the same idea as all my doctor friends? They get it from the same source. Do you know where that is? It's the media. It's what everyone knows. It's the internet. It's what we see on every package that you go grocery shopping. This has more protein than that. Okay, you need more protein. Okay, fine. Is it true? So let's look at the science. There's no doubt that they have strong, uninformed positions. One day I was sitting in my emergency department working away. I was at the computer, and a partner of mine was sitting there working at her computer. She's one of my healthy partners. She brings granola and carrot sticks to work instead of cheeseburgers. And I know she was slim, and I know she exercises, so she should be better trained than any others. And here's the question she asked me. And if any of you have been lifetime vegetarians, I know you've been asked this question yourself. Here's what she asked me. Ted, what do you do for protein? Thank you, I have a reader here. That's good. What do you do for protein? Already, I know she has been duped. She's bought into the mantra that everybody knows. Why? Because she thinks I have to do something extra, specific, targeted for protein because I'm a vegetarian, so therefore I don't get any protein, right? So what do you do for protein? Okay, so to answer her question scientifically, and again, I could go into very deep, but I'm going to quote two big resources. The WHO, the World Health Organization, this is a 125-page booklet specifically on protein and amino acid requirements in human nutrition. They should know. They looked at all the studies from Loma Linda, from Mayo Clinic, across the world, British, and they looked, what is the requirement? Now, one more, I'm going to give you another source, so I'm not just quoting one. This is the position paper on nutrition and athletic performance, okay? So sometimes I have people say, well, but I'm an athlete, so I need something different. I need more, okay? So this is the position paper on nutrition and athletic performance by the American Dietetic Association, the Dietitians of Canada, and the American College of Sports Medicine. These are big wigs. These all agree, and I'm going to say they're right. What do they say you need? I could do all the math for you. I'm just going to tell you very quickly. Based on the data available for normal human adults, 10% of total body calories should be protein. 10%. Not 30, not 38, right? Okay, what does this mean for you now going to grocery shopping tomorrow? Am I getting enough? Do I get 10%? You can work it out into grams, how many grams you need, but then what do? Everything you buy, you check the grams and put it in your calculator? I want to free you of that worry right now here and make this so easy for you. Here's what we do. To do it very quickly, I want to review, though, nutritional protein requirement. The true minimum is actually only 5%. Here's how science works. They do the test, they take the animals, they do the studies, they measure the urea in your urine, and they figure out what's the true minimum, and they double it just to be safe. So the true minimum is actually only 4 or 5%, what the human body needs. They double it to give the RDA. That's the recommended daily allotments. That's 10%. And then they have another one that you'll sometimes see. It's called the RDR. That's the recommended dietary range. And so again, all they really do is say, well, 5% is minimum, 10% is very safe, but let's double that again and say a good range is between 10 and 20%. All right, I don't have any objection to this. The average standard American diet, which I call the SAD diet, the standard American diet, gets about 19%. So they're right in that range. There's no problem. Just with normal eating, you get plenty. The average vegetarian is usually about 17 and 18% in huge studies. Perfect. Right in that range. Way above 10%. There's no danger of you getting into trouble with that type of a dietary recommendation. Now, paleo or Atkins or low carb will say 20 to 35. Atkins actually says 45%. So my partners are basically all Atkins, paleo, low carb type people. They think that it needs to be much more. Well, the science doesn't show that. All right. So again, remember, as we go forward with this range, 10 to 20%, you're fine if you're in that range. So now let's take a look at some food. To look at foods, thankfully in America, we have these things called nutrition labels. Now, they can be kind of overwhelming. There's so many things on there. I hope to focus you on two little things. But to make it work, you only have to know two numbers to do all nutrition math. You have to know the number 4 and the number 9. Okay? Fat has 9 calories per gram, Everything else, whether it be protein or carbs, have 4. So with those two numbers in mind, let's start looking at some foods. So here we have Deli Select, thin slice, premium meat, turkey breast. It says 99% fat-free. That's a lie, but we're not talking about fat today. We're talking about protein. So here's what you do. You look at the nutrition label, calories, 60 per serving. Okay? So a little bit of math. How much protein down below? 11. How many calories per gram of protein? 4. Thanks. Good. Some of you are listening. All right, so you take 11 times 4, and you get 44 calories. So of the 60 total calories up at the top, 44 are protein. What percent is that? Well, I'll do the math for you here. It's 73%. So there's no doubt that we're getting, obviously, plenty of protein from meat. Duh. That's what it is. I mean, protein is muscle, right? Okay. So, but now let's take a look at this one. Carrot juice. Well, Doc, that ain't a protein food, There's no protein in carrots, What if my partner would say, Ted, what do you do for protein? Well, I eat carrots. What? It would be her reply to that. Well, let's take a look. Look at the science. In one serving, 70 calories, how much protein? 2. 2 times 4 is 8 calories out of 70. 8 out of 70 is how much? It's 11%. What do we need? What's the range? 10 to 20. Carrot juice is right in there. Okay, let's quickly move to some other. Rice. Well, that's just starch, Doc. What are you talking about? No, actually, if you do the math, rice is 13%. It's actually 2.5 times the minimum, the true minimum of 5 of protein. It's well above the RDA. It's right in that range. It's perfect. All right, corn. Well, corn. I mean, that's just nothing but starch there. Don't tell me that. Well, no, corn actually has 15% protein, smack dab in the middle of the perfect dietary range for protein. Potatoes. Oh, come on. Don't tell me potatoes. That's nothing but starch, right? Potatoes, 16% protein. Now, if you dip them in hot fat and fry them up as French fries, now the calories are doubled all in fat. And so you've ruined a good potato, okay? But if you take the potato as it is and eat it that way, it has all the protein your body needs. And we could go on. Bread, and this varies, depends on what type of grain they put in it, whole wheat, gluten, flour, whatever they put in. But you've seen Dave's bread, 22% protein. It's above the range recommended. And of course, now wait a second. These are veggies. Paleo eat them, because they don't want any starch. They don't want any carbs. Heaven forbid that we get any carbs. Okay, fine. Guess the protein. 30% protein in broccoli. Now, you can't eat enough broccoli to maintain your weight. You'd have to eat buckets of broccoli. But while you're eating your broccoli, you're not harming your protein nutritional needs. It's all there. And of course, the obvious one that people don't understand, that people know, beans of any source, whether it be lentils, black beans, pinto beans, I don't care, peas, green peas, 46% protein. Now, nobody's suggesting you eat just carrots here. I'm not suggesting you eat just potatoes. But can you see there is nothing that you can buy at the grocery store if it's a whole plant-based food, if it's a food that God made, that grew on the stalk of the vine or in the dirt, that doesn't have enough protein. So, how do I avoid protein malnutrition? I just eat. Pray with me, if you will. Father, we are so thankful that you are our Father, that you begat us, that you created us out of the dust of this earth. We are so grateful for your breath of life. Lord, may we return that breath to you with intelligence, with reasoning together, with sense that turns us all, this whole world, towards you. Lord, we don't always understand. We don't always get everything about it, but we trust that you will lead us towards truth, greater and greater amounts. Lord, free us from our delusions, our misperceptions, by looking at the truth in your Bible, in the nature, in the world around us, in science. We praise your name for this. In Jesus' name, amen.